I think it's nice that this room is pretty small, so we can all remain seated and we can still see each other. So let me introduce myself. I'm Paul Maurer, and I am a Holocaust survivor just like Marianne.
20 years veteran.
Yes. When Marianne, who has been living in Switzerland for the past 70-some years, heard that I would be giving a presentation about her at the conference in Ungvar, then she said, I'd like to come because I like to meet some of the people, at least some of the students and some of the participants. So Ungvar is too far for me to go, but Budapest I can still make it from Zurich. So she came a few days ago, and we are very pleased to have her here, both to the participants of the conference and those friends from Budapest we have invited. Okay, I'm a dual US-Hungarian citizen and a retired university professor from Indiana University, where I was 30 years. And then I came to Central European University, where I was 16 years, and retired from them also a few years ago. And I'm also an amateur historian working on World War II and Holocaust-related topics, including Raoul Wallenberg, the famous Swedish diplomat who so bravely saved the lives of so many Jews in Budapest in the second half of 1944. It is interesting just to note that Wallenberg had a chance to assemble a pretty substantial staff, and Marianne was one of the first persons who joined the staff of Wallenberg. And how do I met her? Well, several years ago, Raoul Wallenberg's niece, one of his two nieces, called me from, she also lives in Switzerland, said, do you know that Raoul Wallenberg's last surviving staff member lives also in Switzerland? Would you like me to introduce you? Please, please, please. So we had a lot of exchanges, email, telephone. I went to visit her in Switzerland, and I became sort of her biographer. So I have a 70-page manuscript about her fascinating life. She can only give you a couple of highlights here in this little time. But anybody who is interested, and I'll be glad to send you the pre-publication version of my biography of Marianne. If you leave your name and email or cards, leave it to me at the end. We will be glad to send it to you. Okay? My initial interest in Marianne was Raoul Wallenberg, it's understandable. But quickly, my focus shifted from Raoul to Marianne, because more than a dozen books and several thousand articles have appeared about Wallenberg. So whatever is to be known about Wallenberg, except to talk to a person who worked with him, maybe that's unusual, but Wallenberg is pretty well known. But Marianne is a very interesting person, and she is much less known and so on, so I decided to focus on her. And quick. By the way, if you want to know what Marianne's experience was with Wallenberg, at the bottom of your program, I put a little note where you can find on the World Wide Web what Marianne wrote and was published almost 20 years ago about Wallenberg, her experience. Okay? And if you really want to know about Wallenberg, and there are lots and lots of books that are full of exaggeration, then read the book that I'm suggesting in English, which is also on the bottom of the program. Okay? Marianne and I hit it off not only because of our shared Holocaust experiences, but also because of personal chemistry. Earlier this week, we had this conference in Ungvar, and representing the leadership is Professor George Iser, conference chairman. And so Marianne would be very pleased to meet some of the conference participants, especially the students. Okay? So let me now briefly introduce Marianne. She's born in Debrecen. That is a city in the eastern part of Hungary. In 1922, so you don't have to take out your computer to know that she's this year 97 years old. Okay? In a Jewish, Neolog Jewish family. Neolog means not too religious, but not Orthodox, but still Jewish. And the family moved to Budapest when she was still young. And after Nazi Germany occupied Hungary on March 19, 1944, Adolf Eichmann came with the German troops to advise the anti-Semitic and German-friendly Hungarian government on how it should implement the final solution. Following well-established practice in other countries, Eichmann set up in Budapest a so-called Jewish Council, the Judenrat in German, to help keep the Jewish population calm and to organize the ghettoization of the Jews in the countryside outside Budapest, and in Budapest to push them into so-called Yellow Star houses, and I was also in one of them, and Marianne and her family, until she joined the Swedish mission, also was in the Yellow Star house. Okay? She was, before the German occupation, she was working, teaching English in an adult class, and the institution was sponsored by a Jewish organization. So when the Judenrat was set up, then they practically instructed Marianne to come and work for them to help with the task that the Nazis have given the Jewish Council. And she, of course, realized that what is the purpose of that, was very upset about this, and she decided to resign and leave. And this is the point I'd like to turn it over to Marianne to tell about maybe how she joined the Wallenberg group, a very interesting story, and a couple of her interesting experiences while there.
Dear friends, or if you prefer a more formal, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and pleasure for me that Professor Maurer has chosen my life story to be presented in Ukraine and this international conference. One of the reasons, and I hope not the only one, is I am very old. Nearly 97 years old. But in spite of my age, I am in full possession of my intellectual capacities. This is an expression which I had to use when I wrote my will some time ago. But don't worry, I didn't make my will because I thought I will be killed when I come to Budapest. Once I was nearly killed, but I survived. So I don't think I would have this experience again, but these are sort of official expressions. Anyway, after the conference, or after my address, you will be able to judge if my intellectual capacities are still working or not. That I have reached such an old age, it's thanks to God's grace, whatever religion I belong. And the organic vegetarian diet to which I use and I believe in, and of course the fact that I had the chance and pleasure to work for Raoul Wallenberg. Now, it is normally my profession. I used to be a teacher and I'm giving workshops, and so automatically I have, the word is in French, déformation professionnelle, I don't know that instead of I say things, I prefer the audience to ask me questions. You can ask me in English, in German, in French, and of course in Hungarian. and I can also answer you in all these languages. So, I think that if you ask, I would like to ask you, I'm a bit hard of hearing, which is necessary or understandable due to my high age. So if you talk, would you please, I don't want to say shout, but talk rather distinctly and rather loud. So now I suppose that you would like to know a bit what I have been doing and how did I get to know Wallenberg. Well, as Paul said, I've been working in the Judenrat, which was not my choice at all, but I had to. And my job, what it was, to try, we had to find which were the so-called Jewish houses, because when there were more inhabitants who were Jews, then the house was declared Jewish house. When there were less Jewish inhabitants and more Christian, then the Jews had to leave. And this work to sort of find out and make a list which were Jewish houses and which were Christian houses, that was the duty, some of the duty that the so-called Judenrat was doing. And there was a date by which they were supposed to finish. And I don't want to say names, I may not remember, but the management thought we shall show the German how efficient we are. And instead of working and until the day they finish, we are going to do everything to finish earlier. And I thought that was disgusting. Sorry. And then I also had a colleague, Ivan Sekei, a very well-known family of pharmacists, and he and I became friends, and he felt the same, and he told me that by the grapevine he heard there will be a Swedish diplomat, or it was actually a businessman who became diplomat, to come to Hungary and try to set up a sort of method by which Jews could be saved from concentration. And he told me, well, since you speak languages, I didn't speak Swedish then, I speak a little now, but very little. And he said, well, English of course, German unfortunately yes or no. Anyway, as he said that we shall, I think you will be able to get a job, and I would let you know. But I left this Yiddish Rat because I was fed up. And I said I am sick, which I was sick physically and mentally, and at the same time there were my mother and my father to look after, whatever. Anyway, I left. And I was waiting and waiting for Iran to call me, and he didn't. Now, if people don't do what I would like them to do, then I like to take things in my hand. Even in my age, if I can organize things, then I do. There are moments when you can't, but I try at least. And so one day I decided, okay, I am going to this Swedish legation and find out if Ivan is still there and if there's a possibility for me to work there. And of course, I was living with my parents in the so-called Jewish house with the yellow star. So my father had a very nice red scarf, and I put on the red scarf, and we had a concierge, we had a what do you call
Concierge, let's
a
put it that way.
concierge.
Husband said.
But she didn't see me because we had a curfew. You couldn't leave earlier and could come back, whatever. Anyway, I walked all the way to, that was Jopa utca, now I think it is Minerva utca, or the other way around, all the way on Gellért hegy, etc. Because I didn't want to take a tram, because in a tram you never know, they try to ask paper, and I arrived there. So previously my father had connection for the Hungarian Red Cross, and they gave him a sort of letter that my daughter is interested, to work in this Swedish action or whatever. And I got there was a queue, and I had this letter with the Red Cross emblem, and I went to the guard. It was a fairly decent man.
Don't forget to say that there was a long line of people trying to get in there to get some papers.
Yes.
And you get around the line.
But I went to him, I showed him the letter, and he let me go in. Well, that was already one step, which good. And then I was looking for Ivan, I found him, and he said, oh, I'm sorry, but I wanted to call you, but I'm going to introduce you to the head of the personnel. And when he asked my name, which my name is Mobach, like yes, but I am no family member of Johann Sebastian. I don't even like his music, but fairly. No, my son loves it, so I shouldn't like it. Sorry. Anyway, Ivan introduced me to this man, his name was Turei, and when he heard my name, he said, oh, are you any relation of Jenő Bach in Debrecen? And I said, it was my father, it is my father. Oh, well, in this case, it's okay, you are engaged. And very good, because he didn't ask my typing capacity, because that was not very, very high level. It hasn't been, and still not even the computer, but I sort of managed. Anyway, that's how I got employed. So that was number one, which you consider it was a chance. Well, it is a chance. Now, what was I doing? I could also stop here and ask you, or rather suggest, if you want to ask me specific questions, I can stop and let you ask. Or if you want me to continue two sort of heroic acts, which I didn't realize the moment it was a heroic act, because I was 21 and I wanted to live whatever it takes. And whatever, if I could do something, then I did. But Paul imagined or wrote it down that I am a heroine. Well, I'm not.
Okay. Right, before the questions, please tell about what those things that you did.
Yeah, well, can we have the time?
Yes, we have the time.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, the mission, what Wallenberg was doing, is set up the possibility for people who had either business or family connection in Sweden, they could be considered on paper as Swedish citizens, and eventually with the Sanglängland, somewhere in, they could go to Sweden. And that should have been, was supposed to be, Schutzpass, that they are Swedish citizens, and they are exempt of the laws against Jews. And so these papers were given to people who came to the embassy, and we had to check the papers and the references, and then we typed out, made out these Schutzpasses with the name of the Wallenberg and that Daniel, the ambassador. It was the text in Hungarian and German, and then there was a picture, okay. But some people had these papers, but they didn't have a chance to go to the embassy to collect it. So, unfortunately, they were caught on the street, and they were taken to Téglagyár, the brick factory outside Budapest, and there they were in concentration camp. They were ready, already gathered together, that eventually they would be put in the wagon and go away to wherever. As you certainly know, to Auschwitz, but we didn't know it then. And then the people, the family, when they found out that they were already at the concentration camp, then they called us to say that my father or mother or whatever applied but had no time to get it and is in brick factory. So would somebody please do something about it? So Wallenberg decided that somebody should take these Schutzpasses were already written, stamped, signed, that they should go with the list to the commandant and get these people out. Now people say it was a heroic act. That time it was, why try it? Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But that was normally, like the other girls or women, we had to type the Schutzpasses, fill in a form, or we had to file and find out. So it was an office work. Now this was something that could be voluntary. And then that's the only time when I remember that I actually talked to Wallenberg. Personally, I mean, he came and saw what we were doing, and he asked me, "Are you afraid?" And I said, "No, why should I?" He said, "But it might be dangerous." And I thought, anything but typing, I would love to do it. And I mean, when you are young, and then there were danger everywhere, on the street, in the air, so I said, I was a colleague of mine who had a car, and then we went to the brick factory with our certificate, of course, identity card to say Marianne is working, is a member of the special Swedish mission, and we had to present it, and we had a list of these people, and the commander looked at it and he said, "Okay, you can do it." Well, I think that was something achieved, number one. But then we had to go into that place. And I must say that it was very heart-rendering to see people on the floor, huddled around, waiting to... It was a sight that I've never seen anything like it. And that is the moment when I suddenly thought, well, actually, I could be also one of those people sitting there by God's grace, or my guardian angel of Wallenberg. I am not somebody sitting there, but I am on the contrary, on the upper side of the situation, and I come here with a list, and I call the people with the list, the name, and those people whose name was on the list, then they raise their hand and say, "Yes, I am so and so." And then we gather them together. And then, of course, what a sad thing, that there were people who were not on the list. And they came to us and say, well, couldn't you do something? And we couldn't. And that was absolutely heartbreaking, because I had a sort of power, but I had no power. They couldn't understand, some of them, why Mr. So-and-so could go out and why Miss So-and-so can't, or Mr. So-and-so. And that is, for me, a situation which I shall never forget. I don't know about the other at the station, but I think this is more in my mind.
Yes.
Is that enough?
It is very good, yes, because I know people want to ask questions and you like the questions.
Yes.
I like to just add one comment. Those who were employed by the Swedish Rescue Mission had a paper that they are there employed and they were exempt from all Jewish laws. No curfew, no living in a Jewish, having to live in a Yellow Star house, no subject to deportation. Why? Because Sweden and also Switzerland, both in the same situation, were very important financial and trading partners for Nazi Germany and for Hungary. And so, in order to maintain that good relationship, they were willing to do these small favors to the Swedish embassy and the Swiss embassy to allow them these exceptions, because they wanted to maintain good diplomatic relations in their financial and business interest. So this is how come that Marianne and also her family could be exempt from, this is why when she says, I was saved by Wallenberg, this really is the case, otherwise she would be in a brick factory and probably Auschwitz and not alive right now.
And burned.
And burned. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Let's open up to questions from students, from anybody else. I'd like to ask you, repeat, please be loud so everybody else can hear and Marianne can hear. And please make your question brief so that other people have a chance to ask also. Please, anybody else would like to ask a question or make a comment? Please.
My question is that ever since this rescue mission and action, there have been voices and which said that the Swedish legation or the Wallenberg mission sold these Schutzpasses for money.
No! 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 That is a calumny. That is impossible. He wouldn't. I know, I heard somebody, because there was a young woman happened to come regularly to Switzerland because she was the daughter of somebody who worked in the Spitex, and she told me, I'm going to introduce you. There is a woman who lives now in Australia, I don't remember the name, and she would like to know you. And so she wrote me and she said, you know, my father could buy indemnity or a certificate, and I wrote her back, and after I said, I don't even want to see this woman because it is a lie. Sorry.
It's just,
I mean, this is a question, I'm sorry, in spite of my age, I'm still very, very...
But at a point, but there were people who made a business out of it by making fake documents. But that is not the Wallenberg and not the staff. It was people who try to make money that way.
Maybe the Swiss?
I wanted to hear just this answer.
Yeah.
You understand? But
Of course.
according to Ingrid Carlberg's book, even
By whom?
Ingrid Carlberg.
But I know her, I know her.
I know that you know her.
I know.
But in her book, she wrote that even Swedes working at the embassy, like Margareta Bauer.
Yes, the secretary
She's
worked there.
the secretary. She gave a testimony after returning to Stockholm that there were a trade with the Schutzpasses in Budapest. So that's why I put the question, because
I
I wanted
didn't know
to hear
about
your
it.
answer. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry
You
that
answered
because
it.
I heard that and by this woman, because it is not, it does not fit to his mentality. I think, I don't know, I am Swiss by marriage, I'm Hungarian by birth, and my heart is for England, so so it's difficult to say. And of course, I'm worried what's happening in Israel, but that is another which I wouldn't even get into it. So I think I am a Weltbürger, what you say that it's a
World
German.
citizen.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this thing I've heard, and it would make my blood boil.
I didn't want to upset you. I just wanted to hear this reply.
Yes,
Thank
good.
you.
Please.
So I'm sorry, but
You gave a good
Because-
reply. You gave a
no,
good
because I
reply.
had this with this girl, and after she was supposed to come, because I live near Neuchâtel, and she wanted to come and visit me, and luckily I had a pneumonia. No, really, I had a pneumonia, and it was a very good excuse that I wrote her that I'm terribly sorry, I'm going to hospital and I can't see.
Okay, lady there, please.
Well, just another sentence. My mother worked also in the office issuing Schutzpasses, and I can confirm that there was never ever a word by buying or purchasing or selling Schutzpasses. It was absolutely no question.
Thank you very much.
And then the students, I hope that you will have some questions. Here is your historic opportunity. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess I would just ask, I'm Ben, by the way. It's really nice to meet you. Thank you for speaking with us today. But kind of what are some lessons you took into the rest of your life from your time with the rescue mission?
I'm sorry, I don't understand it.
So
You
some
speak
lessons.
American English?
Slow down a bit.
British accent.
Oh, my accent. Oh, I'm sorry. So I guess.
Sorry, Paul.
Okay.
No,
So-
but would you mind repeating your question?
Sure, absolutely. So some lessons you took into the rest of your life from your time with the Wallenberg rescue mission.
What lessons have you taken from?
Can you repeat this?
Yes. What lessons did you take from your work with the Wallenberg mission that you kept for the rest of your life? What
That's
lessons?
What message?
Lessons. What lessons? What have you
What lessons?
what have you
Message.
taken
What
away?
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Well, there was an individual, a person who would do things for humanitarian reason, and somebody who cared, who did something because maybe he was an adventurer, I wouldn't, but somebody would, I remember that one of the employees' wife was going to have a baby, and at that time a Jewish woman couldn't go to any hospital, and he offered his villa where he lived and all the facilities that the wife of this employee could go and have a baby there, and there he managed to get a doctor for her. And that was an act which pure charity, because there are acts of charity, and then after you want to be in a list and say so and so donated so and so. Well, that was not his. See, he was human, and also he would go and risk his life. And that's which I shouldn't say because I'm Swiss, at least that's where I pay my income tax quite a lot. So, my husband and my children, but I mean, it's why did I say that?
Yeah, because you wanted to say that it was not like the Swiss.
Yes, that the Swiss, they also did a very, very important saving, rescue action. But they had something to do with the Zionists who were going, and that is a whole controversy which I knew nothing about. But we had a round table in Paris where it was already mentioned, and Wallenberg risked his life. He really went on the street. He went to the Hungarian, German, German border. No, it was Austrian. Sorry, that was to go to Vienna. That was Hungarian, and there he stopped a wagon, and he was distributing, not for money, but for the good of his heart, to people who were in the wagon, and without saying, are you so and so? And he managed to save a lot of people. And that is something which you mentioned, that a whole wagon load of people came back from the Hegyes Halom, I suppose it was Hegyes Halom, and arrived at the Józsefvárosi pályaudvar, and they were saved, and then they could go to protected houses. I think there was what you call the international ghetto. And that was, now there you said this, that I was supposed to, there was a, not a gender, because the excuse me, but they were the scum of the earth, as far as I'm concerned, sorry. But there was an officer, a police officer, and he was trying to control the papers that who came back on that wagon. It really had
and able to set the stage for this, because it's a very interesting story, but I think it's important to set the stage. Wallenberg went to the border station and managed to say, here are the persons whom you took on the wagons, about hundreds and thousands, but I have several who have the Schutzpass, but didn't have a chance to pick it up. And he was able to talk into the station manager, many called Budapest and so on, that those people who have about 35 or 40 should be sent back to Budapest. And when said to the Budapest, Wallenberg knew everybody, to the head of the railroad station in Budapest, when these people come back on the wagon, please call me so we can pick them up. And then they got the call, and these women were on the side, waiting in a wagon. And then Wallenberg asked for volunteers, and Marianne was one to fetch those, because I don't have time to go, and so on. But all the staff was Jewish, so Jews had to go from the mission who were exempt in some way to try to save other Jews, and Marianne volunteered, and
because I'm supposed not to look Jewish, I don't know.
That's right. And Wallenberg said, oh, it's great, you're blonde, you don't look Jewish, you give credibility to this mission. And so she was not the leader of that. A man whose name she forgot was the one who was the leader to get those people, so on. And then she just amazed watching those people walk. And then please pick up the story. What happened?
Well, it was just a little story that there was this man, I don't know, his grade was a police officer or a soldier, and he asked me, why you a nice Christian girl?
No, but you forget, sorry about this, but it's important to say the person who was handing out the Schutzpass, checking the Schutzpasses, the head of the, who went, said, Marianne, come here. You see the guard over there, go and distract him.
Yes, I was supposed to distract him. And I was supposed to flirt with him, looking at him and say, oh, what a wonderful uniform you have. I was thinking, why don't you go to bloody hell? Sorry. sorry, by the way.
It's okay. It's okay.
And then he asked me, why do I care for these wretched Jews? And then
a nice Christian girl, why do you care about those wretched Jews?
There is also a moment when I can keep my mouth shut, not always, but that time I had to, and I said, well, I was working for the Hungarian Red Cross, and the Swede wanted somebody to help out, and so I was transferred momentarily, and then he invited me for a drink in the evening, and I said, I am terribly sorry, but I live with my parents. This was true, and I had a fiancé more or less in the front. Now, I would like to say something which I thought I won't, but about a couple of years ago, maybe 8 years ago, for the last 15 years, I have been working at the Jesuit Study Center, and I am a Catholic, I am Jewish, and for people who are shocked, I'm sorry, but that's the way I think. There are two. And anyway, there was the head of the Hungarian Jesuit community, or there was a conference, an international conference in Budapest, organized by the Vatican, where there were from the Hungarian clergy, and of course they were looking at the fact how the so-called Eastern countries like Hungary, Romania, Poland, what is the situation of the Jews in 2008 or something. And Christian, who became a close friend, he's going to bury me, I don't know, maybe not tomorrow, but sometime. And he said, well, I wanted to hear at least one of the discussion, and there was a little lunch, a buffet lunch, and he said, all right, I will introduce to Cardinal or whatever. Okay. And there we were sort of queuing up where we had something to eat and drink, and there was, I don't remember the name, there was a Hungarian bishop, and he asked me the same question, which I shall never forget. He said, how did a Swedish neutral person of a good, important family, because the Wallenberg bankers' family, they are like Rothschild, except they are not Jewish, but they are Lithuanian probably, and why should he come to Hungary to save Jews? And I said, am I dreaming? Is it the same that somebody asked me 70 years ago? But since I was invited, and I was a lady, or I suppose so, behaved, so I swallowed, and I looked at him, and I think I said, well, that's what he wanted to do. But then after he looked at me and said, but you are now Catholic, aren't you? And I didn't say, unfortunately so, but I just said, yes, but it has nothing to do with it. Afterwards, we went around, when it was, this buffet lunch, we pick up something, and then we sat at a table, this Christian and this Hungarian man, and Christian thought, all right, well, you will be happy to talk in Hungarian, but not to that man. And then suddenly there came an American woman, was looking for a place to sit, and I said, come here, there is still a seat for you. And during the whole buffet lunch, I was talking to this American woman, and I didn't say one word, because I thought, how possible that somebody who is a bishop, who comes, that was an international organization, to have an understanding and a help, because Christian wrote, he's a Judaistic, he went to Jerusalem, he wrote his PhD and he helped somebody, it's in your book, but I would like to say that I had a problem, of course, you are Jewish, you are Christian, what are you? And when he told me the Virgin Mary was the first Jewish mother, I always remember that. So for me, it is a way, maybe not everybody, but I think the Jesuits are open to all religion. I'm sorry, I'm not here to make a propaganda for the Jesuits, but I just thought I will have to say
Before we have to close, let's see if we have some more questions. Please.
Én azt szeretném megkérdezni, hogy a magyar, tehát a nagy gettó, illetve a nemzetközi gettó lakói mit tudtak a 44. július 6-i koszorús akcióról?
Fogalmam nincs. I have no idea. Shall I say what this lady, what's your name, madam?
Zsuzsa Hantó.
Zsuzsa Hantó, okay. This lady asked if the people in the international ghetto in 1944 mit tudtak. What did they know? What was happening? And I told her I have no idea.
Ugyanis Wallenberg 44. július 8-án érkezett Budapestre.
Bravo.
Ha nincs koszorús akció, ha koszorús ezredes nem menti meg a zsidókat, Wallenbergnek nem lett volna kit menteni július 8-a után. Ezért kérdezem.
Paul, you know all about Kosovo, so
we
you
will talk
answer.
about it, but it's not I think it's not,
But answer
not
on
something.
Hungarian to the...
No, it's not something. She knows because we have been in contact about this. I would like something that is her experience to be asked Marianne. So anybody, please, I would like to see another student to ask a question, please. The rabbi there to ask a question.
Can you share with us about your later life, your family, and what you're doing for children or grandchildren?
Share about your later life, something about your later life, subsequent life. So, was to just, the highlights of what happened in the last 70 years in your life. You married a Swiss, you lived in Switzerland, had a family, career, and she's 97 years old and had a happy life afterwards. And she thinks about Wallenberg every day, thanking for her life. I think that's about it.
Yep.
The highlight of my life is I have two wonderful children.
Good.
And they made a career, and they never, that was no hindrance that they had a Jewish mother. My son became a very well-known, internationally known neurologist, and my daughter is family therapist and social worker, and they all have been to Israel, and they all absolutely know, but for a long time I never talked about my experience because my husband was a very high in the military
Civil
justice.
service.
He was a colonel, and it was not a good idea in Switzerland. Even in neutral Switzerland, God forbid, it is not a good idea to have a wife who is of Jewish origin. anyway, I'm very glad that I survived and I have 2 children and hope they are in good health.
One last question, anybody? Please, there, lady.
Hi there. I wanted to ask you about your experience maybe with your family during the Holocaust, because I know they said after you received your job with Mr. Wallenberg that would have meant that everybody kind of obeyed the same exemptions that you did. So,
Yeah. She's asking whether your family was also exempt from the Jewish laws.
My family in Hungary.
Because you were working for Wallenberg. And
Yes, you mean in 1944 in Budapest? Yes. Yes, my father and my mother, they lived in the Ülői utca, in the house where we had the office.
Yeah.
Yes, they were exempt.
So this is a special privilege, you see, and the reason...
Partly because my father was, nevertheless, first he was a decorated officer, he was an exemption, he was a munkaszolgálat, he was the commandant before and then after he was in a concentration camp, and my friend Ivan saved
them.
And after my father and mother were staying in the Ülői utca and they
you see,
survived.
this was a privilege
But that's
granted
my
not only to the employees but also to their immediate families. And the
Yes.
reason that the Hungarians and Germans granted this and more or less observed until the Arrow Cross came, and then it was not necessarily a saving because they wanted to maintain good financial, economic relationship with Nazi Germany and Hungary.
thank
Okay,
you.
very good. Okay, and what there?
Hi. So because you and your family were granted that security by you working for Wallenberg, what was the, I guess, interactions like between you and other Jews looking for that similar safety? Was it more of envy or more of looking to you for help?
Okay, the next question is, what was the relationship between you who were protected because working for Wallenberg and the other Jews? Were they envious or try to get help or something?
Yeah, I mean the people whom I met on the street, or what sort of other Jews?
What sort of other Jews? Yes.
I guess Jews who were facing insecurity
Uh,
and
where would I
persecution.
meet? I mean,
You mean she's working in the office, so she didn't go out to the talk to the people who were standing in
I talk to
line?
people and it's such a long.
That's okay.
I am sure I have been thinking of it at the time, but just, I don't know. I mean, I was, well, if you have, are you American?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if somebody is a Negro and would say, or somebody who is not, sorry, I forget it, I didn't say that. But, no, but I mean, you are privileged, and if somebody has not the same facility, you can go in America, you can go to all the universities, I suppose, and study, and there are people who don't have the money and they are not able to study. For me, that is the top of to be able to study, because to buy things, or no, but I mean, there are people who are privileged, and I was privileged. Yes, thank God I was privileged. But what could I do? I mean, of course, I only could do things which were like working for Wallenberg, and I was told what to do in the office, but I couldn't go on the street and help people. Maybe I would have done it if I could. Or maybe I was an egoist. My daughter says that I am still very egoist, but maybe. Maybe she was here, she would say you speak too much. That's what she said, because I've also had a round table in Paris, and I had to talk about Wallenberg and then she was sitting in the first row, and she did like this, because she thought I'm going to say things I should. So I think
Yes.
Can I ask?
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. One last question or comment?
Okay.
Please.
It's not comment, I love to hear you.
Okay.
So it's caught my attention that you left the Judenrat. You weren't so happy there what's happened
no,
in the Judenrat.
it's an understatement.
I would love to hear what happened in the Judenrat.
What happened?
Was there a debate?
I mean, we were doing an office work, and there were all those lists, and you had to find out people. I did not go to houses to count the house, but there were others, and they came back with lists, and they said in Chakiuts or whatever, there were so many Jewish households and so many Christian, and then this would be, they met statistics. It was a work of statistics.
But you are asking, I think you are asking about a bigger question. The Judenrat, the Jewish Council, is very controversial. Very
But I
controversial.
don't, if you ask me, is that what they were doing for the Jews? Have you ever heard of Hannah Arendt? I'm supposed to.
Of course, yeah.
And what she says about all, I'm sorry, now I am probably going too far, but not all the Jews were doing something for their fellow Jews. May I say that without
Yes, of
being
course,
attacked
of course.
on the street
Of
afterwards?
course, of course, of course, of course, of course. It's a human condition, you know, that so many people were out just for themselves.
I was not, because I was just a poor little girl. I mean, poor little girl, that means I was not important, really. Now you made me important.
No, okay, okay. But let me just make a comment
But
on
it's-
George's question.
No, but I wanted to say that they were behaving something like they had the right to make decisions without, we were not asked to work, not to work day and night to arrive to this limit. We were just
Yes.
like,
Understand that we understand that you had a very low
Very low.
calorical diet. But I think the question here was a much bigger one, and I say that the Judenrat, the Jewish Council, was highly controversial. Some people say they didn't, highly controversial, because among other things what got Marianne upset, they were so anxious to please the Nazis, the Germans and
exactly.
so on, to do it even before the deadline, because they
but
thought...
that's what I said. I was
Yeah, no, it's okay. And because they thought that by doing it, they're doing a favor, they will get a better treatment, the Jews. That was a mistake. And of course, 500,000 Jews who were deported. What could the Jewish leadership do? I mean, where would those Hungarians go? They didn't warn them. If they tried to warn them, they didn't believe that that could happen, and so on. So it's a very complicated issue. And from Marianne's perspective, perfectly understand, she hated the idea that she was pushed to do it even faster to please the Germans. But you know, it was a very difficult situation. Thank you. Okay, now, thank you very much for...
Would like to take a picture.
Okay, just a second, I'm
Go ahead,
organizing
go
this,
ahead.
I'm organizing this, just hold it. I know that some people would like to maybe shake her hand or take a picture with her. We have a situation, but we don't want to crowd on her right now. So we simply ask people who want to have a couple of minutes with her on one-to-one, not for a very long time, because I think there will be more people. Please just line up, and then one by one, you're welcome to talk to her. Okay? So thank you, the event is over. Thank you for, this is the Wallenberg room of the Holocaust Memorial Center. Couldn't be more appropriate places. Historic events because of Marianne. Okay, thank you. Please line up this way. We want to talk to her.